Ethan Walker had grown used to carrying burdens heavier than most men could imagine, bags of groceries that stretched his paycheck too thin, boxes from long shifts at the warehouse, and the invisible but constant weight of raising his 8-year-old daughter, Lily, on his own. Life had stripped him of luxury long ago, leaving only resilience and responsibility in its place. That evening, as the rain poured relentlessly, he and Lily hurried down the dimly lit street, her tiny hand tucked securely in his. He was already thinking about the leaky roof that needed patching and whether there'd be enough money left after rent to buy Lily the new shoes she desperately needed. But his thoughts were interrupted when he spotted a woman sitting on the slick sidewalk outside a cafe, one hand gripping her ankle tightly, the other shielding her face from the rain. Her tailored navy suit, clearly expensive, clung to her in the downpour, and her heels lay abandoned beside her. She looked completely out of place, like she had stepped out of a glossy magazine and fallen straight into a puddle. Without hesitation, Ethan crouched down, his voice gentle but firm. "Are you all right?" The woman tried to stand but gasped as her ankle gave way beneath her. Lily's wide eyes darted from her father to the stranger, sensing the urgency. Ethan didn't ask more questions. In one swift, instinctive motion, he lifted her into his arms, cradling her against his chest. The woman stiffened at first, unused to being touched by strangers, but the warmth and strength in his hold quickly eased her resistance. Rainwater dripped from Ethan's hair as he carried her toward the cafe, his daughter scurrying alongside. Inside, the barista rushed to offer a towel, and Ethan carefully lowered the woman into a chair, kneeling down to examine her swollen ankle. "It might be twisted," he murmured, his rough hand surprisingly careful as he adjusted the ice pack the barista handed over. The woman's eyes lingered on him, studying the worry etched into his features, the frayed collar of his shirt, and the way his daughter clung to him with unshakable trust. "Thank you," she whispered softly, her voice betraying both strength and vulnerability. Ethan only nodded, brushing it off as if helping her were the most natural thing in the world. What he didn't know, what he couldn't know, was that the woman he had just carried from the rain wasn't simply a stranger in need. She was Claire Lawson, one of the most powerful CEOs in the city, and his quiet act of kindness was about to change both their lives forever. The rain had slowed to a drizzle by the time Ethan helped Claire into his old, battered sedan parked outside the cafe. The car door creaked in protest, and the faint scent of engine oil mixed with Lily's crayons filled the air, a stark contrast to the sleek, chauffeured vehicles Claire was accustomed to. She hesitated for a moment, glancing at the torn upholstery and the child's drawings taped proudly to the dashboard, but when she looked at Ethan's steady gaze and Lily's warm smile, she felt oddly safe. "I could call a cab," she offered, though her voice lacked conviction. Ethan shook his head. "In this weather? And with your ankle? It's no trouble." As he drove through the wet streets, Claire found herself studying the man beside her, his worn hands gripping the steering wheel, the tired lines etched around his eyes, and yet the quiet strength in the way he carried himself. He wasn't flashy, wasn't trying to impress her, and that alone intrigued her. Lily, perched in the back seat, leaned forward with childlike curiosity. "Does your ankle hurt a lot?" she asked softly, her innocence breaking the silence. Claire smiled gently, touched by the girl's concern. "A little, but your daddy's helping me, so I'll be all right." Something about the way she said, "your daddy," made Ethan's chest tighten, a reminder of how much his world revolved around that small voice. When they reached her apartment building, a modern high-rise that towered above the city, Ethan hesitated, suddenly self-conscious about stepping into a world that clearly didn't belong to him. The doorman rushed to open the entrance, giving Ethan a curious glance as he helped Claire out of the car and supported her to the lobby. She caught his unease and quickly said, "Would you walk me upstairs? Just to make sure I don't trip again." The request surprised him, but he nodded, guiding her gently. Inside her luxurious apartment, Ethan set her down on a plush armchair, the kind of furniture he'd never be able to afford in a lifetime. Yet Claire's eyes weren't on the decor or the view that stretched across the city skyline, they were on him. For years, she had been surrounded by polished businessmen and people who treated her with calculated politeness, but here was a man who didn't even know her name and still carried her through the rain without hesitation. And as she watched Lily doodle on a napkin at her coffee table, Claire felt a strange warmth bloom in her chest, one she hadn't realized she'd been missing. The days that followed blurred into a rhythm Ethan hadn't expected. Despite his own exhaustion from double shifts at the warehouse and late nights helping Lily with her homework, he found himself stopping by Claire's apartment to check on her ankle. At first, he told himself it was simply the right thing to do. After all, he had carried her out of the rain, and leaving her stranded didn't sit right with him. But each visit stretched a little longer than the last, not because of duty, but because of the way her eyes softened when she saw him. Claire, usually buried under meetings, endless phone calls, and decisions that determined the future of an entire corporation, found herself looking forward to the knock on her door. She would sit at the kitchen table in casual clothes, her polished armor stripped away, and watch as Lily chattered about her school drawings, proudly showing Claire pictures of stick-figure families and colorful rainbows. Ethan often apologized for the intrusion, embarrassed by Lily's boundless energy and the modest groceries he sometimes brought with him, simple things like homemade soup or bread from the corner bakery, but Claire never minded. If anything, she savored those ordinary gestures more than the expensive dinners and glittering events that usually filled her calendar. One evening, as Ethan adjusted the pillows under her leg and checked her swelling, he spoke quietly about his life, his voice carrying the weight of years of struggle. He told her about losing his wife to illness, about the crushing loneliness that followed, and the relentless drive to give Lily the kind of life she deserved, even if it meant sacrificing every dream he once held for himself. Claire listened without interruption, her heart tightening at the quiet dignity in his words. She realized then that Ethan possessed a kind of strength she had never seen in the boardroom, a strength born not of power or wealth, but of love, sacrifice, and an unshakable devotion to his child. And as she watched him smile faintly at Lily's laughter, Claire felt something stir deep within her, something she hadn't allowed herself to feel in years. She wasn't just grateful for his help anymore. She was drawn to him, to the man who carried burdens with grace and still managed to make space for kindness. Against all odds, the powerful CEO found herself falling for the struggling dad who treated her not as an untouchable figure, but simply as a woman worth caring for. It was a Saturday afternoon when the truth finally came to light. Ethan had promised Lily they'd bring groceries to Claire, knowing she was still recovering and likely skipping meals between work calls. Balancing a bag of fresh bread and fruit in one arm, he knocked lightly on her apartment door, only to be greeted by the building's doorman who addressed her with unmistakable respect, "Ms. Lawson, your driver is waiting if you need the company car." Ethan froze, his eyes flickering between the doorman and Claire, who appeared behind him, dressed sharply now, her ankle better but her expression suddenly uncertain. "Ms. Lawson," he repeated, his voice heavy with disbelief. Stepping inside, Ethan noticed the framed articles on her walls, photographs of her at corporate galas, and awards with her name engraved in gold. The pieces of the puzzle fit together with a cruel click. She wasn't just Claire, the woman he had carried from the rain. She was Claire Lawson, CEO of one of the city's largest companies. A rush of emotions stormed through him, confusion, hurt, and a sharp sting of inadequacy. "You should have told me," he said quietly, his jaw tight. Claire's eyes glistened with a mix of guilt and fear. "I wanted you to see me for who I am, not for what I own," she confessed. "With you and Lily, I wasn't the CEO. I was just Claire." Ethan turned away, torn between anger and the tenderness he still felt for the woman who had become part of their lives so quickly. It was Lily who broke the silence, climbing onto the couch beside Claire and holding up a drawing she had made, a picture of the three of them standing beneath a big sun, smiling hand in hand. "Look, Daddy," she said innocently, "we're a family." Ethan's heart cracked open at the sight, his defenses crumbling as Claire's trembling hand reached for his. "I don't care about titles or money," she whispered, her voice raw. "I care about you, and the life I see when I'm with you both." Ethan searched her face, seeing the vulnerability beneath her polished exterior, and for the first time, he understood, she wasn't offering him wealth or pity. She was offering her heart. Slowly, he took her hand, his voice steady but tender. Then maybe we can build something real, together. Relief washed over Claire's features as she smiled through her tears, and in that simple moment, the struggling dad and the powerful CEO found themselves bound by the one thing that mattered most, love.